Environmental defenders face many risks while protecting Jamaica's natural resources. They often lack adequate access to information, justice, and meaningful participation in decision making. That's where the Escazú Agreement comes in. It's a landmark regional treaty designed to ensure access to justice, adequate environmental information, meaningful participation, and ensuring stronger protections for environmental defenders. Hello, my global family. I'm Dana Lynn, and welcome to a special podcast series called Defending Our Rights, Environmental Justice in Jamaica, brought to you by the Jamaica Environment Trust in collaboration with Global Yadi, with support from the UNDP implemented Global Environment Facility Small Grants Program. So in this series, we'll be exploring the Escazú Agreement and its role in securing environmental rights across different contexts. Do you love the beach? I know I do. And if you don't, maybe you're in the minority. Now, the beaches are one of Jamaica's most treasured cultural assets. And they are more than just scenic coastlines. It's a birthright, according to the Jamaica Beach Birthright Environmental Movement, JABBEM. They've been working to secure access to public beaches for Jamaicans. And when we think about the increasing developments, private ownership, and other environmental risks, these are limiting access to beaches in Jamaica. And so we're going to be exploring with Dr. Devon Taylor, who is joining us from JABBEM for this episode, the work that goes into his advocacy and how this grassroots organization is fighting to secure access to public beaches, which is an essential part of Jamaica's cultural heritage. Dr. Taylor, welcome to Global Yadi.
Give thanks, Dana Lynn. Great to be here.
All right, so JABBEM, I know a lot of people who are in this space are familiar, but for persons who didn't even know that there is an organization that is working to guarantee more access for something that we all love as Jamaicans, the beaches. Tell us how you all got started.
Yeah, so JABBEM is really, just riding on the shoulders of giants in the past who have taken up the advocacy and the fight to secure the rights for Jamaicans to access their beaches and their rivers. So the fight has been an historical one, and we really just kind of continuing that fight. So we got involved in this fight because we all live in coastal communities. And over the years, we have been just noticing and experiencing, the displacement from beaches and rivers that we grew up around. And, the straw, the proverbial straw that breaks the camel back happened when my community of Steertown, which have been using a mom and bay beach for more than 100 years, was displaced. And so that was a moment that really is a watershed moment in our community, because the beach was an extension of our community. All right. And so we had to do something. So I, started to explore what could be done. And I immersed myself into laws and reach out, network with other people, talking to ones, figuring out, what to do. And I came up with, this movement saying that the only way to be solved is a movement must be developed by the people, of the people and for the people that will advocate for the rights, and we could get into, the intricacies of it. But JABBEM came in response to the violent displacement of Jamaicans from beaches, and in particular, the Mama Bay Beach in St. Ann.
Wow, Dr. Taylor had no idea that this was going to be the story. And so we really have to dive a little bit into, while you gave us an overview of this violence, just walk us through, how did it start? What really happened?
Well, these plans, what happened on the other side of the fence, we don't really know what did go on in the mind of the state and the mind of the alleged owner of that land. But our community use this beach for fishing, use this beach for vending, use this beach for meditation, use this beach for therapy, use this beach, to harvest, seaweeds from the sea, use this beach as an extension of our community. And we're just carry on, doing it as normal. When, suddenly developers show up, and this happened in COVID, Jamaicans are protected under customary laws, accessing beaches and rivers. So any tracks and roadway that you've been using to access the beach for more than 20 years, you have the rights to do so. That is recognized within laws. So they know that they could not really remove the people. So the opportunity presents itself in COVID, when we have all these national disaster laws that says you cannot, go to beaches, and beaches were closed. So they use that and starting to fence the property. And when the community saw that, the community moved into action and said, no, you can't do that. And the community started pushing back. Community summons a meeting with the parish council that led to no resolution. The parish council did not come down on the side of the people, despite the beach was registered under fisheries and recognized in several developmental order by the Jamaica government. They still did not protect the people. So our community, we did the right thing. We engaged the stakeholders, we engaged the government, and that did not lead to any resolution. So the community protested. We protested, we shut the road down, we gather, we voice our concern. The police show up, security force show up, block us out, push us out. And they've run a chain link fence, right? And we resisted. Within a month or so, the community took the fence down. We ripped it apart. We took the gate off, and we demonstrate that this is our space and we want it back. That was met by more violence, right? It was met by more violence, and they erected a concrete wall. A concrete wall was now erected to the tracks and the roadway that we've been using. The police was still standing guards there. And then what happened is that they took members of our community and saying, well, they're giving up their rights, and they paid them more than $250,000. So they're fronting like they're a settlement where that's nothing that the community discuss and say that they're taking a settlement to give up rights. That was never something that the community unanimously do. It was a coercion, between the political class and the stakeholders to try to bribe people, in our estimation, in order to give up their rights. And so we protested. We protested, and we kept this fight going. We set up a change.org site. We went on the radio, and we went on the TV. We engaged the print media, and we never acquiesced our rights to Mama Bay Beach. And that's why that beach is sitting in the court now. We're fighting for prescriptive rights of access. So we did everything that was asked of us to represent ourselves. We got no protection from the state, and we fight. And that was the ground zero for this movement, all right? And we could talk about, equally a ground zero as the Bob Marley Beach fight, and we could speak about that. But Mama Bay, right, was situated in St. Ann, right, where St. Ann has lost most of the beach in Jamaica, all right? And this is something that Jamaicans need to understand. The citizens of St. Ann's are paying the price of displacement and disempowerment when it comes down to the coastline. And our government has not responded to really help us. So we have to fight. This movement is about equal rights and justice. It's about environmental justice, social justice, and economic justice. And that's where JABBEM is rooted in.
Wow. Dr. Taylor, we learned so much from that experience. It's actually disheartening for so many reasons. Some of us, what we don't want to happen is coming up in a culture where we're normalizing this kind of deprivation and limited access. And I say that because we almost start getting used to the fact that the beaches don't belong to us, that we have to pay for everything that we want to access and should have a right to enjoy. And it's not until people like me and other persons, I've also heard it talking about traveling to other Caribbean countries. When I go to Barbados, people talk about Antigua and Barbuda, and I'm certain the other ones, that you pull up to anywhere and the beaches are free. Asian people looking at me funny. They couldn't believe. And I say that because right now some of us, God bless the areas that people are able to pull up in Jamaica, and you have your spot that it means that you can pack your lunch
Yeah.
take your family somewhere if you don't have any money and go and enjoy the beach. Some people who are based in Kingston or other parts, when you're traveling to the north coast, you think about gas, you think about toll, you think about paying to go to some of these sites. And I'm speaking from experience and the plight of other Jamaicans. And so we don't want to get too, and I don't want to sound too passionate, but I think it's because we can relate to the beaches. And so a lot of people, it's a cause for concern, but I don't think a lot of us knew the extent the extent to which people were impacted in this way, and how some of the privatization and transition of ownership is occurring. And so through your response, we have learned many things, some of the actions that you've taken to pursue environmental justice, and how it is that JABBEM defines environmental justice in the context of beach access. And so community and ownership is something that has come out strongly in the case that you've shared with us, and the power dynamic that exists. But what I want to find out as well is, though it sounds of course that there is still the legal battle that's ongoing, I don't know how much you're able to divulge there, but what has been the response from the policymakers, the private stakeholders involved in this, and maybe not just limited to Miami Bay and the community of Steertown, but in terms of the other cases that JABBEM is advocating for. What has been the response as it relates to the legal and constitutional recognition that JABBEM has been calling for?
We in Little Duns River, the defendant is the Urban Development Corporation, which is a statutory body of the Jamaican government. So it is the Jamaican government. In the Blue Lagoon, we are going up against 3 different private owners, and we are going up against the government. The Portland Municipal Parish Council is the Jamaican government. They are a defendant. The Jamaica National Heritage Trust is part of the government. They are the defendant. In Bob Marley Beach, we're going up against a private company and the Commissioner of Land, which is a part of the Jamaican government. So, we have 4 cases in the court, right? And at 3 of the different locations, the Jamaica government is the defendant. So the Jamaica government is going up against its people regarding the rights to beaches. And then the private stakeholders, they are not relenting. They are claiming that it's their place and they want to lock us out. So that is the fight that we, the Jamaican people, are up against. The policy of the country. And in particular, the Beach Control Act of 1956, which we think violates the Constitution as it relates to environmental justice, social justice, right? And economic justice. It violates our rights to these, spaces. And that is why we says, these laws needs to be repealed and replaced. And constitutional amendment, must guarantee very clearly the rights to these spaces. Now, we know Section 13 of the Constitution speaks to, rights to our ecological heritage, and we think, Beach Control Act also violates that right, but it is protected under the colonial saving clause laws that the Jamaican government uphold. Now, if the state was for the people, the state would have dismantled these things, dismantled these systems of oppression, right? And liberate our people as it relates to our access, right?
What does the beach control law state or act state?
Yes. So this is a very important point, right? The Beach Control Act does not give Jamaicans any right in or over the foreshore or the floor of the sea. So Section 3 basically says no one have the right, right? In or over the foreshore and the floor of the sea. So this has been flushed out, several years ago. And, Dr. Carlin Cooper is one of the staunch advocates, for beach access rights for several decades. And she wrote a piece in the Gleaner, and the then minister, head of NEPA responded and clarified that this act gave Jamaicans, and I want Jamaicans to understand this, or our international, friends need to understand that Jamaicans have no right to access the beaches, no right to swim, no right to bathe, no right to fish, and no right to walk along the foreshore. This is what the Beach Control Act codifies, okay? Right? No rights at all, right? It gives some rights to people who own property that adjoins the foreshore, that adjoins there, and we know who are these people. So the planter class that, when we're moving into a independent era, from 56 into 62, remember this thing has been around for 69, going 70 years, right? They made sure they had policy in place that protect their interests, and they were the ones who control all these coastal spaces, and they protected it by codified into policy that their rights remain, but that of the descendants of enslaved Africans was not. So they disempowered the entire descendants of enslaved Africans and put policy in place that robs us of that, our birthright. Blood, revolution, fight. Jamaicans fought for the land, and we won that war. That is how our independence came about. It wasn't just handed to us. And now we, the owners of the land, are fighting against policies that is preventing our access rights to our rivers and our beaches.
So when you say that JABBEM is championing beach birthright, you are now what does this mean in essence? It means that the descendants of those who were here before have this access. Just clarify that for the persons who can fully tie everything together.
Yeah, it's the right of the nation, right? We are tracing how we got here, right? As, African people, the descendants of African people, right? And the atrocity of slavery, right, brought us into the Caribbean. We were enslaved and we worked for 500 years. No pay, under the worst conditions that a human being could really endure. And that is why the reparation fight that the Jamaican government is also leading is an important fight, right? But we were brought here and we fought against oppression and tyranny and terrorism, dehumanization. Millions of died in the journey, through the Middle Passage, and millions, thousands, hundreds of thousands died on the plantation. And across Jamaica, several rebellions rose up. Right? We know Paul Bogle, we know Sam Shaw, we know Tachi, we know Nani, we know Kojo, we know all of these revolutions that we fought across the land to liberate our people. And we won. So we won the land. So the land is the birthright of our people. Yes. And access to beaches is a land rights issue because we have to cross over land to get to beaches. So if we own the land, if we fought and declare ourselves independent and emancipated, then the land belongs to the people and it is the birthright of the people. Through that struggle, and as a result, rights to accessing it, rights to the resources, rights to protecting it, rights to benefit economically from it, rights to our social needs to it, rights to our spiritual need to it, is wedged in our birthright. And also, in our birthright is the right to partner with nature to protect it for the next generation. And so JABBEM encapsulates a struggle around rights, fundamental birth rights to the space. From our Afrocentric descendants, right? And that we are saying, and we want these things to be recognized. This is why colonial laws, right, and the way government is structured and treats people must change. So the issue is not one of vexing. The issue is one of displacement, disempowerment, right? Discrimination. The issue is rooted in colonialization. And if we are truly going to decolonize through Jamaica is projecting a constitutional reform, then we have to look at the laws and the structure of government that still, right, are wedded to the vestiges of colonialism that is hurting and harming the Jamaican people on all levels.
You're right. Dr. Taylor, thank you so much for driving this kind of point home and rehashing some of the lessons that we need to remember and how all of those things are ingrained from the past. And so if we are to move forward, sometimes they say don't look back. But you have to look back and correct certain things.
You have to.
And now I want to put Carrie in the Escazú Agreement to say, what can the Escazú Agreement do for us in this context? Because one of the key pillars is access to justice, environmental justice.
Yes.
And so we see that being a repeated barrier for grassroots organizations like JABBEM and others when it comes to legal recourse and the recognition of the constitutional and legal rights that you're talking about. And so I want to find out from you, your perspective, how the Escazú Agreement can strengthen the fight for beach access and environmental justice through the pillars that it stands for: justice, public participation, and access to information.
Very good. The Escazú would be a very important tool, right? Now, access to information, Jamaica does have access to information legislation, and we've been using it to really understand, some of the behavior of the state. We are able to get some information, but others we're not able to get. All right, and some of this information that we need to get is very important. So the Escazú is important, because a legislation like that would really open up, these avenues more. The participation of our people, right, which is very important in all these environmental advocacy, whether it be just in the street, your democratic rights to protest, or you join a legal case is important, in advancing justice. And we, members of our organization have been, for the lack of a better word, have been threatened that they should really not participate in this. They should leave it alone. All right. And so, Escazú, of course, would empower the government to protect environmental defenders. So we have experienced those things, and the agreement would firewall those kind of things and help to protect the people of the country, through getting the information and, alleviating the fear, which is a barrier for people to get involved in many of these things. And then the pathway to justice, which is very, very important. As we talk about, the environmental justice, we talk about the economic and the social justice. The law provides the framework that would allow the government to put these mechanisms in place, particular around environmentalism. And so this agreement will be, enhance the security that we the people need and the information to arm us with that information that will fully now understand and be able to participate. So it's and Jamaica signs, Jamaica just need to ratify. And why are they not ratifying this agreement? The coastal economy is the most important component of Jamaica right now. It is driving more than 35% of GDP in Jamaica, right? More than 50% of foreign exchange is based on the coastline. So the coastal economy is Jamaica and has been positioned as the future of Jamaica. And if you break down these laws and change the system, the Jamaican will participate more in this kind of economy, and they don't want that. That's not how colonialism works. That's not how disaster capitalism works. Those things require inequality, and inequality that is based in policies such as the Beach Control Act is good for them.
Yes. All right. So Dr. Taylor, in your responses a while ago, some of what you were touching on, it links to the kind of risks and threats and hurdles that environmental defenders face. And it's very important for our audience to get this kind of insight into the Jamaican context, because the Escazú Agreement extends to Latin America and the Caribbean. First regional treaty that is, contextualized for us. And in certain Latin American countries, we know there are extremes. Persons are even killed. For the certain issue that they champion. And while we may not have this level of extremity, there are barriers, the kind of threats that people face locally sometimes are enough to kind of send them, probably silence people, quell the work that they're advocating for. And so you gave some examples of the bribes, that some that people face. But in terms of JABBEM, how have you what has been your experience, and speaking from an organized, so not you, Dr. Taylor, individually only, but the other members of JABBEM or communities that you're working with, what kind of threats have they faced or challenges they face, and how have they navigated them?
As I said, it's a wide range, of threats, right? So most of the ones who work in these spaces, right, participate in the informal economy, all right? And informal economy is a very important piece of Jamaica to survive in Jamaica, all right? And this is their livelihood. And they will threaten their livelihood, all right? Threaten their livelihood. And when their livelihood is threatened, then sometimes they're forced, we talk about the bribe, to accept things, all right? And so people have been, experiencing this, right? We talk about the outward threat of violence, right? I was in Portland, maybe 2 weeks ago, and a marine police cruiser, drove up, and I was there with a member operating off a beach, and he was threatened. He was shown a video of him underwater doing tour, and the security officer, which is a member of the JCF, basically says, well, do you have any handcuffs in the back? Threaten to arrest him, okay, and tell him that he doesn't want to see him in that space again. Those kind of intimidation happen in Jamaica. I've had members who, on beaches, start defending their rights, that they are allowed to be on the foreshore. It's a public space, get into argument with security, and then the next day, police come to his house saying that he was arguing with security and, he knows he shouldn't be in that space, right? So the state, right, has put our people in those intimidatory spaces. All right? I mean, the first protest in the Blue Lagoon was met by securities with guns. All right? This is, public videos out there with that. All right? Public videos out there with Mommy Bay, people being, shot at.
Yeah. For people who, I know sometimes it's just an indication for our audience to do our own research, but just a little overview, let the people know what the context is for the situation in Blue Lagoon, Portland.
Yes, because they closed the Blue Road, saying that, okay, within 6 months we're going to reopen back and all the economic activity will be in place. It will be better run. You will have, bathrooms and, vendors will return and, more orderly. And that thing went on, for a year. And, we had to really push hard because we understand on a prescription rights in Jamaica. If you are blocked out of a space that you've been using for more than a year and you acquiesce your rights, then your customary rights is broken. You only have a 1 year period in which to act on your customary rights. And so we recognized that it was coming up on such a time, and then we had to act. And the way we act is to openly protest, which is a constitutional right, and showing that we're not acquiescing our right to these spaces, and then the security force comes out. All right, and it was the same thing in Mommy Bay. So every time we get up to fight and protect our rights, then the security force comes out. Protecting, in Blue Lagoon, they're protecting, it's the parochial public road, but they were just protecting the interests, right? Because all the people that live in the Blue Lagoon, they want it as their own swimming pool. They don't want us inside there. So they have converted the entire area into a fish sanctuary that locks the people out. You can't really go inside there. If you try to get to Monkey Island, Pelou Island, here comes the security. You can't be in those waters. They're locking us out. They're locking us out on that style, all kind of mechanism they're throwing into the place for kind of like nudge us out and push us out. And we need champions in law and champions in legislation. And that's one of the things that we're pushing. We're pushing that legislation change. We're not interested in no damn negotiation with no hotels and guest house and villas to give us any easement to get to the water. That's archaic. What we are saying that the laws must change that gives us fundamental rights of access to the foreshore, to the beaches, and the beaches around the country must be declared as public lands with the right of the public to access and use them. That's what we are demanding. No piecemeal discussion with no hotel to open up a track. They came after us. It's 500 years with slave for that country. Now them a eat all of the corn and them don't want I and I on there. Why? Now why people? Money a make? Man a get rich? The money a repatriate out of the country? And we can't go all a swim? And we can't protect nature because the hotels them a degrade the space. They're building in the sea. You must understand that, my sister. Right now, hotels are building in the sea in Jamaica. So what give the government the right to take public resource and transfer it to private hands? What give government the right to do that without a consultation with its people? And this is why Escazú is important. Because information would be had. Discussion would be had. The Beach Control Act has been around since 1956. We have gone through several different administrations. So let's lay that on the table. Because JABBEM is not a partisan organization. We are political because the solution is going to be political based. But political as a movement of people and of Jamaicans who must recognize that our economic, environment, and social rights are being violated and we are displaced and dispossessed in broad daylight. It's one of the biggest transfer of the wealth of the nation to the private class. So we have to fight.
You're right. We have to. And that's why, Dr. Taylor, and I'm happy that every time when I went back for you to expound on certain things that you're able to offer this kind of clarity, because again, the purpose of this kind of conversation, while not a lot of people go and say, what Escazú mean, what it linked to, but you've done a really good job of connecting the dots for us, because we want to get people to understand that to advocate for the environment or to be an environmental defender, it's not just a penny section of people that are trying to cause problem, because sometimes being a disruptor is a good thing in this case. And so we really hope that people who, the audience that are able to receive this message can reflect on the reality that we exist in and understand that everything is interconnected. So after we live in the environment, we live in the environment.
Yes.
So there is no separation.
None.
There is no separation from what we're trying to do, and to advocate is to speak on behalf of the people and the issues. Sometimes, because some of us, we don't have the information, we probably don't even have the wherewithal to navigate some of the legal speak, some of the constitutional issues, because knowledge is power. And so we're really happy that you're bringing it to this level. And while it kind of seems like an impasse at this stage, and when we understand the kind of challenges that you're battling with, and now when people are going to ask the question, then if this is what we're going up against, is the Jamaican government, or is Jamaica ready then to implement Escazú? And if they are, what changes do we need to see in fighting for environmental justice? And I think maybe this is just a recap of what you mentioned. As we wind down, what is it that we hope to see for communities fighting for environmental justice if we implement Escazú? Tell the people what we want.
Yeah, these changes on a legislative level would fundamentally empower the people of the country. And empowerment of people, right, is an important thing for people to advocate for their rights. So empowerment brings information, it brings access, and it brings responsibility. So these kind of, legislation will empower our people. So we want a country right? In which, as I said, JABBEM want a complete 494 miles around the country to be declared public lands, right? And we want, that space to be, conserved and environmentally managed well. We do not want hotel to build on beaches. Hotel does not need to be built within 150 feet of the high water mark. Cannot do so, right? So fundamentally, these things got to be written in legislation that now codes what can go on the coastline. So that will bring in, the environmental justice. That will allow us to protect these species. And of course, the economic justice piece is that we, the people, will have the right, to benefit from this space as all multinational corporations, and can do so. So it's an important thing that the power dynamics of the coast, recognize the interests of the Jamaican people, that the Jamaican people can own and, operate in this space. I don't know any, number of Jamaicans that own resorts and, just big establishment along the coastline. Those dynamics must be, changed. And we talk about the social component and how important it is, right, that we are able to access and use these spaces for all our needs, our therapeutic, our medicinal needs, right? Of course, our recreational need, all these things that we use the coastline for, we need to use it and have access to it. So these legislation must be able to protect those rights, those fundamental rights. As my elder says, we live in between waters and don't have access to water. We know through what JABBEM is projecting right now, a reimagination of the coastline and the use of the sea. Through how we see it, because I could never interpret my reality through coloniality. I cannot reimagine I self through disaster capitalism. So the way how we got into this problem that we are in, that led to the enslavement of our people, and the kind of economic model, and the kind of constitutional arrangement and government structure that we have right now, I cannot interpret I self through that. And our people require modern laws, modern legislation with the participation of the people to realize an outcome that will be represent the views, represent the vision and the dream and the aspiration of the Jamaican people as it relates to beach ecosystem, to river ecosystem, to the treasures of the land. We have to reimagine that. And if we keep ourselves on the trajectory as to how capitalism work, colonialism work, and the requirement for discrimination and inequality, then we go find ourselves in these systems of oppressive spaces that we now go nowhere. Oppression are whole we down, that brought on by these laws, and our leaders are not moving away from that. So we need to re-envision the whole thing. And beaches and rivers, and this fight is a fight that is worthy to have. The fight for our birthright, to realize our dreams and our aspirations is important. And the country needs to start paying more attention to it, because we are fighting for the future of Jamaica.
Well, Dr. Taylor, so many things to say, and I am just listening to you, and I am just saying, if it's one podcast episode that I really hope that if you're listening right now, to take the opportunity to share this with somebody, take the opportunity to really reflect on what your reality is as a Jamaican, as another citizen of whichever country that you're from, if you're listening to it right now, and to really explore, what it means for protection of natural resources in the country. There's so much more to explore. But the last thing, Dr. Taylor, before we close out, I feel like this could be a whole day, but we can't do that. Where can people go to learn more about JABBEM's work?
Yeah, so JABBEM, we're on all the different social media platform, right? We're on Instagram, JABBEM. We're also on Facebook, and we're on, X and, Blue Sky. Just search for JABBEM. We're also on TikTok. We have our website portal, jabbem.org. You can get your information there. We also have a petition out there, on change.org. We have a GoFundMe page out there. And our phone number is on our site, and our email address, info.jabbem@gmail.com. You can reach out to us, and staying connected. But, there's something I thought was very important that I needed to really explain to the ones them. That, I may have not said it like this in the interview, that the kind of tourism that Jamaica practice right now, the all-inclusive tourism, right, is a very dangerous product to the country. It is one of the biggest driver of inequality in our country, and we have seen recently protests by the tourism worker, that is undergo many oppressive kind of system within these all-inclusive resort. They're not paid properly. Their needs are not met. They work in these spaces. They can't use, the beaches in these spaces. It's like an apartheid model, and that kind of tourism we need to get rid of out of the country.
What's the alternative? Because I get you saying that sustainable. Because now everybody talking about sustainable tourism, and it's more than just using one toll per day and all of that, turning off the lights in the leader room. So what does that look like for the alternative to what you're saying?
Yes, the alternative. So number one, these hotels should not build on the sea, on the sand. They should not be built on the shore. So no more development on the shore, right? As far as how the model operate, you come into the airport, you shuttle to the hotel, and then you stay there. We can't do that, right? You have to open up the sector. So therefore, the economics that is being benefit can benefit the larger population. All right. So we have to move away from locking in tourists into resort. All right, and excluding the Jamaican people. The Jamaican people is not benefiting from any of the meals in terms of economic to restaurants, to the opening up the tour. So it's a monopoly. It's basically a monopoly, and monopoly does not work for the population. All right, so you need to move away from that model. And the model that the beaches are now, Jamaicans are excluded from them. So most of these tourist beaches, Jamaicans can't use them. So you have to move away from that model. So you cannot have a model practicing in the country that excludes the population from using these spaces. So whenever they are built, you must have conservation easement, that Jamaican can just walk and access these spaces, and the space are shared. All right, and so they can't commandeer the beaches. The government cannot give them exclusive license. So the beaches that are before the hotel is the hotel property. You can't do that. And that is one of the hallmark of all-inclusive tourism. And we know that this don't work. Right, it does not drive more footprint into the island that brings more revenue. The experiment has already done in the Canary Island, who have, I think, more than 9 million people, visiting them, and the poverty index there is very high. A lot of the indigenous people are still in poverty. That is what is in Jamaica. It does not improve the infrastructure in and around the space. I look at Ground Zero St. Anne. We don't have the best hospital. We don't have the best road. We don't have the best school. We do not have the best water infrastructure. I know the folks in airports and Davistown and all these interlands do not have good water supply. We do not see the economic benefit of farmers because of all the food in this. They're still, importing most of what they need. 64% of the fish that's consumed in Jamaica is imported. So it is killing, all right, our fishing economics that in Jamaica. So this kind of model is ruining the country on all those levels that I talk about, and we need to move away from it.
All right. Sadly that we have to move away from this podcast. The time. But Dr. Taylor, we really appreciate you coming on, because like I said, we're not going to deny that sometimes there are terms, there are concepts within environmental participation that it needs time to break down, and that's why we needed you to come with the specifics, and you did. so people can understand how does this relate to my reality. And I think you've painted a quite the strong picture, and we hope that it is received by people to improve their understanding and really improve appreciation for what environmental defenders do, because now you've given us this big takeaway about how is it that we can play a part in preserving Jamaica's cultural heritage if we aren't given access to it. So thank you so much for taking the time, Dr. Taylor. And we want to thank you, our audience, for tuning in and learning more about the Escazú Agreement and the role that it plays in protecting natural resources and our ecological heritage in Jamaica. We continue to ask you to subscribe, like, share, and just spread the information and tune into more from Global Yadi and the Jamaica Environment Trust. Thank you so much.